that relations of business just mentioned will stay, and the way how to go out of it is one is just localize as much as possible. I know that one Latvian bank implemented second Latvian language in ATMs. So very good. I hope that Google is still not very strong in that. And the second part is just ask for the state protection. I'm really not sure that the Latvian government will manage that, but EU together can somehow do something.
So, talking about the Google story, so yes, I like it, but once again, the formula of a success is its time, information, money, and energy. So, but this formula losing one more point. It's also marketing. So, how successful you are on sales. If you are able to create the product, but you are not able to sell it, so there is no cost. So if you're creating the worst product, but you're good in sales, okay, you can sell it. So if you're creating the good product, but you're worse on marketing, so you're still able to sell it, but it's smaller business. So absolutely the same here. So the Google was exactly in time. All businesses was searching for information, and the internet became like one single place. There is all information is located, but you doesn't have the tools how to search it. They find proper time and proper point how to provide the services what the people was asking, and it's always the cost. The people are looking for services. They need services. If you can provide them, okay, you are winning. This is the key of success. Time. Time and service in time.
Great. Any other question out there? Yeah, thank you. Any other questions? There. Okay. So who was the first one? You're the closest one.
I just wanted to ask, probably Carlos, about the threats to lending. You were speaking about lending a lot, but do you see that corporate lending will decrease a lot because the payments are being processed much faster? So, for example, manufacturing will not need so much corporate finance, trade finance. And in these terms, the role of the bank, as you see it, will actually be not so important in this aspect. And also think about funding for new businesses, if you think of ICOs, for example.
Yeah, it's a very good question, but a very, very difficult one to answer. I think there might be some Nobel laureates that would struggle to answer it. So there is this strange thing that if you look at, for example, United States dollars, then 1.6 trillion of dollars are issued. If you look at how much dollars are being used, it's 7, 8 or even more trillion dollars. There is this concept of broad money where I kind of take $100 from you. I say, okay, you have your $100, but then without telling you, I lend it to Sandra. She lends it to somebody else, etc., etc. So there is this concept, and the more wealthy economy is, the more it trades, the bigger this amount of broad money. But then again, you're absolutely right in saying that if it becomes more efficient, if this whole kind of chain becomes more efficient, then it might shrink. Whether banks would stand to lose out from it, well, marginally, probably yes, you would see this effect that the balance sheet amount of banks would go down. But again, if that helps the economic development, then you would have the opposite direction. For banks in general, the better society is doing, more it is growing, more GDP activity and trade activity is there, the better it is for banks. So again, then that would definitely, I think, compensate for those other effects, but yeah, better efficiency in financial world, all in favor. Why not?
And to add to this, I think if you look at the global estimates of the financing gap for SMEs, that is well beyond the probably the efficiency estimate you would get. So one could really build on that argument that Carlos was saying, is that if you be able to service that the SME segment more satisfactorily, you'd actually increase the amount of lending that potentially is needed for these SMEs that would now be able to get payments for their services not in 90 or 120 or 180 days, as is often the times globally, but in a really shorter time span.
Great. I guess the next question, please.
Hello. Thank you for your time spent here and kind of strange voice. Okay, I would like to ask about the blockchain and the research, maybe even practical research that was done on this topic. Because, well, everyone is talking about how good this technology is, how much it can make, or how it can change our banking system and all financial world. But what kind of the research, or based on what kind of, I don't know, like researches it was done. And another part of the question, if these researches are available, because I'm as a student, I would like to write my master thesis on this topic, but unfortunately there is no real data available. Yeah, thank you.
This technology is better. So, practically you're trying to compare different tools and different economy based on the different principles. So, but a lot of research was done already. I think you should just study a little bit about the economical history. The Gershon Copernic law was describing more efficient money push out less efficient money. So this was based on the old money. Then the government was printing money. They practically using the gold and silver. They putting the logo on the money. But the less efficient countries was taking that money and they melting them down and putting their logo on top. Why? Because the money losing their cost and they're using it just like a silver. And just to avoid this case, the government start to add the additional copper in the monies. So, and these create the law about the efficiency. Absolutely same here. So if we're talking about the paper money, they have a lot of limitations. They living in the electronic era. And if you would like to pay for services using the electronic form, which kind of form or what kind of form will be more efficient, time will show. But they has pros and cons in different forms. The economist was also mentioned it's sorry for economical terms, but you mentioned the fractional reserve. You also mentioned the loans. And I think these also be points why our money in current economical system are not so efficient. They're losing the cost. They mentioned that altogether. You cannot say what amount of money are existing right now, how the loan is spread between the banks, how the fractional reserve is working, and what the real cost. The blockchain-like technology can provide you answer. It's only your choice. Would you like to use them or not? You can use the blockchain also like an AML instrument. Instead of digging for old records for analysis, you can just automatically go through blockchain and just create the sort from 0 to 100. So the money came from different sources. It's trusted, it's not trusted. It simplifies work. And it's also make money more efficient. But once again, there is no silver bullet. I cannot say what they can avoid the fiat money. So just 10 minutes ago, the electricity was turned off. So how efficient they are. So how efficient it was about the electronic money. So if there is no electricity. So yes, you can use, but you should create also the backup plan, plan B, plan C, plan Z for all the cases. And saying what the gold or silver or fiat money is absolutely losing their efficient usage, no. Just different tools. So then there is existing more appropriate tools for your tasks and less appropriate tools for your tasks. You can just compare two different systems, and I think it will be just visible.
And a very short and practical advice. There is this thing called National Bureau of Economic Research. I just checked there. There are a couple of papers on that one, definitely. So nber.org. This is by far the most sophisticated place where all such researches are published, including by Nobel laureates and would-be Nobel laureates. Thank you. The next question, and I guess we have a time for a few more. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Kaspars Reikis from the Latvian Blockchain Association. I understood that the Latvian banks are quite skeptical about the cryptocurrency and don't believe really in cryptocurrencies becoming a functional means of kind of payment or money. However, we can see that Japan and Switzerland are able to embrace the cryptocurrencies and even kind of recognize them at the government level and let the people innovate. And surely their policy is not to support criminals, right? So why are we worse?
Thanks. Well, probably back to the first question. I think if you look at the small print, the Switzerland, the case of the Switzerland is that the regulator is indeed recognizing that those ICOs that have been registered as securities, right? And so in that case, if you would go through that route in Europe, I think that would also cover the required elements. So I guess the basics here is that we inherently are not against these developments. It's just that today this is an unregulated market, and we're subject to the banks are subject to all sorts of regulations that pretty much say that any dealings with an unregulated financial intermediaries are unacceptable risk and therefore cannot really be serviced that way. So I think we see that as the discussion in Europe between the European Banking Authority, the member states, the European Securities Market Authority will develop, there will be a way to register these and to become regulated market participants, at which point a lot of these worries should go away. So we are encouraging that it moves in this direction, and we're actually suggesting that. But in the meantime, that's the situation.
And I can just add, I have no problem that I might sound as an old dinosaur to you, because I believe in what I say. Again, Bitcoin might be a perfectly fine means for speculation. It's like with Picasso paintings. If you believe it is worth $100 million, be my guest and buy it and believe in that. But something becomes true money when a sufficient amount of people want to borrow in that thing, knowing that within 20 or 30 years there will be a central authority taking care of their repayment horizon and their needs. And nothing of that sort is happening with Bitcoin. So again, I sound like an old dinosaur to some of you people. I have no problem with that. Time will tell who is right, but I'm quite certain on what I'm saying.
Thank you. Or is there another answer?
I would like to talk a little bit about the ICO. So the ICO, I think it's a great example how the new tool was not used appropriately. So the ICO creates the new way how the startups can raise the funds, but it doesn't change the nature of the startups. So if before, from 10,000 startups surviving only 100, absolutely same happens right now. The ICO simplify only the way how you are raising the funds. But if before the venture investor was taking care about the startups, they are choosing, they are helping, they are advising, they are also filtering a lot of startups. Right now, there is no such things. So people just writing their ideas on the paper. They are just publishing them. In some cases, it's even the fantasies. They doesn't provide you any promises, and the electronic form of money collection is also creating the huge distance. You doesn't control your money. You cannot get them back. So you doesn't know even where you send your money. So the tool is just not used appropriately. And I think it's a question about the evolution in time, so how it will change in the near future. But right now, market should also realize what the minuses and what the risks are. So the best way to realize all the risks, just to face the risks. So the people are losing money, but they are getting the experience. So what the regulations can do and the government can do, so they can just describe the case and explain what happens, why it happens. Then responsibility still will be on the investor side. But the ICO like a case, I think, even create the more worst situation between the startups, because it simplifies the money rising, the funds rising, but it's working even like a huge demotivation. Then you're looking for like seeds for funds to create the new product, and you asking only for 10,000, you calculating all the expenses. It's a minimum what you need. But instead, there is a lot of people who are just believing your idea and they just put you 1 million. So does it motivate you? No, I don't think so. It's even working in absolutely opposite direction. So people losing their motivation. And the greatest point, what makes all the startups more efficient, it's just the motivation of the team. So the startup by itself is consists. The efficient startup can be only if they have efficient team and then they have the motivation. So right now it's working even in the opposite direction. But during the time I think it will definitely will be changed, or it changed the form and it will change the control. Right now it's risky, no doubt. Even the statistics, by the way, show during the last 3 months the proportion of successful ICO and the failed ICO is changed dramatically. From 90 to 10 during just 4 months, it changed absolutely on opposite. So 90% fails and only 10 survive.
And the one other thing I would add in response, recalled as our colleague was talking, is I think we also have to see this, what's behind the smoke, so to say. So you mentioned Switzerland and Japan, and in each of these cases, their moves and the way they've been communicating and selling their regulatory environments, there are particular reasons. So in the case of Switzerland, they've made a move on the ICO registration and trying to position themselves as startup-friendly places. At the same time, the same regulator has made a clear move not to proceed in the same way with the open banking regulations, a la the PSD2 in Europe. So they are exempting themselves from opening up their market to third-party providers. So that's one side. In the case of Japan, the move on cryptocurrencies is very much driven by the fact that they have exceptionally high cash usage in the market, and they are trying to rapidly move the consumers to other means, and they actually see this as one way of igniting. And in fact, very much driven by the fear to the question here that the big players might actually come to the Japanese market and their local players will lose out. So again, in each of these cases, it's the small print, the background, the motivations that matter, and the sales work that they are doing.
The question is about the blockchain. What do you think? How can the blockchain change way how the banks talk to each other? Will it replace the SWIFT and SEPA?
I think there are many ways. I would say that the most low-hanging fruits are in trade finance, where bank is like a central clearing body checking documents on both sides, and it hasn't changed since medieval times. And blockchain is a perfect match to get rid of need for any central authority. Of course, you might still need some clearing house or some way to agree on which platform to use, but it becomes much more efficient. And that's just one example.
Yes. It's just a question of time. I mean, how long will it take? Because it's Swift and it's so much, deeply in the infrastructure. But eventually, yes, it will.
In fact, yesterday we had a high-level forum on AML and CFT, anti-money laundering and countering financing of terrorism forum, where we had the former executive director of the Financial Action Task Force, and this was one of the questions that we covered in some detail. And of course, there's a search for these solutions today. Now, the sense globally is that we don't yet have a type of a blockchain solution that would allow many entities on the same market to securely see all the transactions in the chain. Hopefully we come sooner rather than later to that solution. There are enough of experiments in various groups out there where in a smaller setting, smaller number of players are experimenting with that, because just to resolve the issues around the correspondent banking, where the current landscape is such that you have 12 to 13 global clearing banks working in the first-tier relationship with about 1,400 banks globally. The number is shrinking, and is very clear it will continue to shrink. And then you have another 11,000 banks globally that are sort of swimming in the pool and being serviced in various relationships. And the 12 to 13 global banks in the middle very clearly say, we're as a spider, we don't know who's sending the money, we don't know who's receiving the money. There's a lot of stripping of information in between that the blockchain could help if these technicalities are resolved. But we are held liable for any mistakes, any deficiencies anybody makes in the process. We will continue to shrink our risk exposure. And there are only two solutions. Either the regulators change the regulation that the primary entity in the middle is not held responsible, or we actually have a technology solution. And the primary entity in the middle is, on the various discussions, pretty much making the calculations on the basis of a 1% chance of getting 100 million fine in 5 years on a correspondent banking relationship. So that's the size of the account that you start calculating off.
Thank you. A few more questions, yeah. One here and a few there.
Hi. Robert Tom from the blockchain project Pro Bono Publico. I'd like to say thank you to all the panelists for sharing your views. And my question is that the technology I'm most excited about today is cross-blockchain trades. I think the immediate impact of that on the finance world today is that that would lead to instant and commissionless currency exchange, say from US dollars to euros or from Swedish kronas to New Zealand dollars. Do you think that could pave a way to having currencies instead of in geographic locations like now, instead of them being in different industries? Thank you.
So yes, the technology for cross-blockchain trading is already exists. One of the technologies what you can read about, so it's the Lightning or the Thunder. And it's also practically the answer on the previous question. So the Lightning by itself, it's working like clearing between the banks. And the UK already did the clearing exactly to accelerate the trading a long time ago. So they set 7 different companies between the banks, and they accelerate all the transactions, just performing the clearing operations between the banks. So right now, the technology can do it semi-automatically. So you're relying on the mathematics instead of like middle action, like middle person. You just relying on the mathematical algorithms, and they can cover everything, all the cases, and even like resolve the issues between the sides. And blockchains, they like different currencies. So, and yes, you can trade them automatically. You can also exchange values. It's only you who are defining the rules, and you who are defining and choosing the tools.
Okay, so 2 more questions.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Some of you know me there on the stage. So, I have a number of things that I would like to get your reaction on. First of all, regarding the cryptos in Latvia, there is an interesting situation where Financial Oversight Committee, where institution, where central bank, they're actually trying to do everything in their power not to have anything to do with the cryptos. So they're trying to get rid of that. So local law peculiarities are such that what is not controlled by anything is controlled by tax administration. And the thing is that because cryptos are not defined in any law and actually completely unregulated at the moment, they're also not taxed. And this is one thing that is also driving consumers, driving people actually to use it. It's cheaper. You don't have to pay tax from it. And only when you actually exchange it for fiat currency, then that fiat currencies can be taxed. Regarding lending, there is one particular company in Europe, I believe they're operating from Bulgaria, that works a little bit like Twino, but with Bitcoins. So there is actually Bitcoin P2P lending opportunities and possibilities already. Another thing, say regarding the regulatory issues, AML at the moment, as current, say, this AML law that is going to be in next year. There is a there isn't even a definition, but there is an article that will name what the crypto is. So it will kind of fall under AML. But again, whenever there is a transaction within the system, it's not going to be checked only when it's transferred to fiat currency. And in Latvia right now, you read every day in the news that there are more and more companies actually using cryptos to accept for payment for goods and services. And I know that in Latvia, just in the last 3 years, number of transactions with cryptos have risen at least 25%. 25 times, sorry. So, thank you.
I can start again. You haven't convinced me to change my mind, and I don't think that anyone will. But when it comes to forbidding, I don't think this is a good idea. Alex had a very good point that it is about educating people about limiting risks, talking about risks, having some limits, because forbidding is not a good idea. If people want to speculate on seashells, Picasso paintings, or tulips in Holland, be my guest, speculate, but don't ruin the financial system, don't go too far and all that. So limiting is not an option, and again, that would be as ridiculous as limiting speculation with tulips or something else in the past. When it comes to this lending thing, again, I take your point. There might be somebody lending bitcoins, but try getting out a mortgage loan. And again, please think of it in a following way. If you believe that this is a good investment and it will increase in value, then it's probably not a good currency to take out a loan, because the value of your loan will keep growing and you will need to repay more and more. So again, this is choose either one side or the other side. You can't be right on both sides.
Can you take the microphone because they cannot hear you?
Very shortly.
Sorry, just to clarify, I wasn't suggesting to limit or stopping or anything. I mean, just was pointing to the fact that there is absolutely no regulation, and that is actually something that is driving more and more people to use it. And from regulatory standpoint, it's a situation apparently that can be accepted at the moment. But from your point of view, this is what I was looking for.
On that we absolutely agree, and in our view, the stance that it's better to either not see the risks or eliminate the sources of risk in one area that they move somewhere else is not a good idea. So it's much better to work and manage these risks and therefore have something in place. So that, I think we're absolutely on the same page, and that's the direction we're asking, because it will. Now we also have to be mindful of the particular risks that in the AML field Latvia has, and also more generally something that is for the financial sector globally. It's like every day you wake up, there are new sanctions introduced by this and that country, and of course there are attempts to circumvent sanctions, and sanctions are not risk. Sanctions violations are not risk-based, assessed on a risk-based basis. These are 0 or 1 binary, and so all the financial institutions are staying away from anything that can land them anywhere close to this. It is in all the countries. This is a criminal liability issue as well. So that's the significance of the issue.
Well, you mentioned that these crypto transactions rose like 25 times over the last years. So from my experience as being, ahead of IT for the last 7 years, so the only real transactions which were, in front of me were when people were trying to DDoS the bank with attacks and then bribing the bitcoins out of to pay for this. So are these guys part of this 25 times? Most likely. So.
I think that's not a Bitcoin problem, because in Russia they have very popular other ways of paying, so they request some local money, not Bitcoins. But about the taxation, just be very careful. They will find it.
Yeah, I couldn't refuse myself, actually. Paying taxes, I mean, no one really wants to do that, but it's kind of a social agreement. So this is not, I mean, there's always people trying to avoid paying taxes, but there's always also people who are willingly paying taxes. So yeah, that's my point. Anyways.
But a very quick comment on that one. A friend of mine, this is a true story, he's a great IT guy. He went to State Revenue Service trying to declare that he has sold bitcoins and he has earned like $20,000 or something. Nobody was able to get this tax from him. He was really trying to kind of persistently declare, and I'm convinced that this is the value that he has gained and all that. He unfortunately failed.
A good one. So,
if we're into anecdotes, I'll share one more, that it's the same problem for police forces that are also trading in these currencies, and guess what? Some of their trades and remaining trades globally have appreciated significantly, so they have an accounting problem there. So.
Okay, thank you. So, the final question, please.
All right, I'll try to keep it short, and thank you, Sandra and gentlemen, for a fierce and interesting discussion and shedding the light from the both perspectives and keeping to the point. So, what is your opinion? Why Baltics or Latvia is not seen on a financial scene as a tiger anymore? Yes, our vintage companies are seen as the tigers, but where banks have been gone. And is there a possibility to change this? Thank you.
Well, it's so the classic answer would be, of course, regulation. So that over the last 3 years, as a bank, as an IT, we were working primarily, and many other banks around were working primarily on complying with all the regulatory initiatives. So, of course, and this draws a lot of attention from developing the business and looking around and developing the products and so on and so on. So this is like the classic answer. So next. second thing is ability of the regulator and environment to provide the area for growth and for the market participants to experiment and to exercise new ideas, new projects that would be valuable outside of Latvia. So let's if we just take a look at a little bit outside on FCA, like in UK, where they have a regulatory sandbox where they invite existing players and the new players to experiment with the new technologies, new ways of offering, creating the product, and then releasing them into real life. So nothing like this is happening in Latvia, and this is something that we would like really to have to happen. Association of Banks is working on to change this a lot, and we from our side we also see that. So hopefully it will this will change.
Thank you, and I will add, I think we also have to face up to the fact that it's very clear that up until around 2014, 2015, the banks in Latvia did have excessive risk appetite. And if I look at my experience up until 2013, being with IFC and working in East Asia Pacific on some of the similar issues, I think from 2010 or so, somehow the discussions globally around both the risk appetite and the accepted norms and how to deal with the various risks moved here, and the Latvian banking sector stayed somewhere else. And